Today, we tap into a principle that's been overlooked, underestimated, and yet silently powerful. Salt, not just a kitchen element, but a symbol of unshakable influence and unstoppable change. What if the key to breaking every curse isn't in fighting harder, but in understanding deeper? Get ready to reclaim your authority and rewrite every label placed on your life. Most people look at salt and see seasoning, just a pinch of flavor, just a little extra on the surface. But what if I told you there's authority in salt? What if I told you that what seems small, what seems insignificant, actually holds the power to transform everything it touches? Salt has never needed to shout to be noticed. It doesn't beg for attention. It enters quietly and changes the entire environment. You can't see it working, but you can feel its presence. And that's the kind of authority you were meant to carry. You see, transformation doesn't begin with noise. It begins with presence. Salt doesn't ask for permission to influence the atmosphere. It is the influence. The moment it steps in, everything shifts. Taste shifts. Temperature shifts. Even decay is stopped in its tracks. Why? Because salt carries a preserving power. It carries a cleansing power. And it carries a transformational power that cannot be denied. The problem is, too many people have forgotten their salt. They've allowed the environment to change them instead of stepping in to change it. They've allowed curses, cycles, patterns, limitations to define their identity, when in truth, they were born to disrupt those very systems. What if your words had the effect of salt? What if your presence shifted atmospheres, homes, relationships, workplaces, just like salt in water? What if every curse that tried to attach itself to you had to loosen its grip because your nature was too potent to be contaminated? Salt doesn't fight with the meal. It becomes part of it, but never loses its nature. It doesn't argue, it operates. You're not called to strive, you're called to stand. Stand with quiet power. Stand with invisible authority. Stand with a kind of identity that can't be shaken by what's happening around you. So the real question is, have you forgotten the salt in you, or are you ready to unlock it? Because once you realize what salt truly is, you'll never see yourself the same again. And once you understand salt, you'll understand why curses can't hold you. But here's what you need to know next. If salt preserves, what happens when it steps into bitterness? Bitterness doesn't start loud. It starts quiet. A moment, a wound, a betrayal. Then it settles deep. Poison slow, spreads wide. And before you know it, your vision is clouded, your heart is heavy, and your future, it starts looking just like your past. But salt, real salt, was never meant to just flavor. It was meant to heal. It was designed to neutralize poison, to cleanse contamination, to break down the very things that threaten your wholeness. But bitterness corrupts. Salt corrects. Some of us have been living with cycles, patterns, mental weights we never chose, handed down from generations, picked up through trauma, formed through fear. And instead of breaking them, we've adapted to them. We've dressed up bitterness in strength, pain in personality, curses in identity. But here's the truth. What you tolerate, you empower. Salt doesn't tolerate bitterness. It changes it. Drop salt into bitter water, and the taste shifts. drop it into decay, and the process halts. And if that's what salt can do in the natural, imagine what you could do if you understood the power you carry. You were never meant to absorb bitterness. You were meant to transform it. Never meant to repeat history. You were meant to rewrite it. You don't need another escape. You need activation. The ability to step into a cursed environment and say, this cycle ends with me. Some of us have been tasting the same bitterness in different seasons. Different people, same pain. Different job, same pressure. Different year, same curse. But nothing changes until you change. Not by effort, but by essence. Salt doesn't perform, it just is. So what if your breakthrough isn't about something new, but about neutralizing what's old? Because once bitterness is neutralized, breakthrough becomes natural. Cycles end. Patterns dissolve. Curses lose their grip. But now the question is, once you've neutralized the bitterness, what will you preserve? Because the power of salt doesn't just end cycles, it protects purpose. We're not done yet. There's another level waiting. You weren't born to blend in. You weren't born to shrink, settle, or second-guess yourself. You were salted for purpose, designed to make a difference, shaped to carry influence, and marked to shift every space you enter. Salt never questions its identity. It knows exactly what it is and exactly what it does. It doesn't wait for validation. It doesn't need a title. The moment it touches something, you know it's there. The impact is immediate. But the essence, that runs deep. Too many people walk through life disconnected from who they really are. They've allowed pain to rename them, failure to redefine them, systems to confine them. But let me tell you this, a misnamed identity will always lead to misplaced influence. You can't lead if you don't know who you are. You can't shift atmospheres if you don't believe you carry power. Salt doesn't hope to change the flavor. It just does. Because salt understands its assignment. You weren't created to be passive. You were created to preserve something valuable, to carry something greater, to disrupt what doesn't align with your purpose. That means you don't follow patterns. You set them. You don't adapt to dysfunction. You interrupt it. But influence without identity becomes confusion. You cannot reclaim what you haven't first remembered. And until you see yourself clearly, you'll keep underestimating the weight you carry. So what are you really carrying? What's in you that environments have tried to dilute? What assignments have been delayed because you believed the lie that you were too broken, too late, too small? Salt doesn't lose value just because it's buried. Its power is still intact. All it takes is activation. And today, right now, is a reminder that your purpose didn't expire. It just got buried beneath layers of doubt and fear. The moment you reclaim your identity, you begin to walk in undeniable influence. But now that you've remembered who you are, how do you keep that identity preserved in a world designed to corrupt it? Because the real battle isn't just around you. It's in what you're allowing to stay inside you. We're going further. Stay with me. Cycles don't ask for permission. They just repeat over and over until what once felt strange becomes normal. Pain becomes familiar. Delay becomes expected. Struggle becomes a lifestyle. And before you know it, you're no longer living by design. You're living by default. But salt wasn't made for survival. Salt was made for interruption. It alters environments. It breaks down it rewrites what's been looping on repeat. Salt doesn't play along with bondage, it dismantles it. In the natural world, salt has a unique chemistry. It breaks down toxins, purifies water, strips away layers that don't belong. It's not loud, but it's relentless. That's the power you carry, the power to break down what's been building up in silence, the power to dissolve strongholds without losing your essence. Some people are living in cycles they didn't choose, financial cycles, emotional cycles, generational patterns that seem impossible to break. But here's the truth. Anything that was learned can be unlearned, and anything built on a lie can be dismantled by truth. Salt has the ability to go where nothing else can. It gets into the cracks, the hidden spaces, the places people pretend aren't broken. It goes beneath the surface and works at the root. And if salt can do that in the earth, then you can do that in your life. You weren't born to manage bondage. You were born to break it. But you can't break what you're still calling normal. You can't dismantle what you keep tolerating. Salt doesn't ask if it's welcome. It starts working the moment it enters. So let me ask you, what cycle are you keeping alive by staying silent? What pattern are you reinforcing by not stepping in? Salt doesn't wait for a breakthrough. Salt creates one. And the moment you stop adapting, the moment you start activating, cycles begin to crack. Chains begin to loosen. Patterns start to shift. Because where salt flows, freedom follows. But freedom isn't just about breaking. It's about preserving what matters most. So the next question is, what are you doing with what you've been trusted to protect? Let's talk about it. It's time to uncover the triple power of salt. Salt carries more than flavor. It carries function. And real power doesn't show off. It shows up. Every time salt is activated, it operates in 3 dimensions. It preserves, it purifies, and it empowers you to prevail. Preserve, because there are things in you that must not be lost. Your purpose, your integrity, your voice, your vision. Life will try to corrode what makes you powerful, but salt was designed to hold back the decay. The moment salt touches something, the process of destruction is paused. And you were born to preserve what matters. Salt purifies, not by force, but by nature. It removes bitterness, fear, jealousy, shame. Salt doesn't argue with them, it enters and transforms. That's what makes it powerful. It doesn't have to be big, it just has to be pure. And the purer the salt, the stronger the impact. But it doesn't stop there. Salt helps you prevail. When everything around you tries to pull you under, salt reminds you of who you are. Salt reminds you of who you are. Salt rises. It endures. It lasts. It doesn't quit halfway. It doesn't bend under pressure. It doesn't ask, will I make it? It says, watch me. You've been given the power to stand in the middle of opposition and not just survive, but win. That's not hype. That's built-in design. You were formed with the ability to hold what others lose, to cleanse what others fear, to overcome what others run from. The problem is, if you don't know what you carry, you keep letting life chip away at what you're supposed to protect. You leak power instead of living in it. Salt doesn't ask for more power. It uses what it already has. So what are you doing with the triple power in you? Are you preserving what matters? Are you purifying what's being corrupted? Are you prevailing when life says you should have broken by now? Because when you operate in all three, strongholds don't stand a chance. But now, the question shifts. If salt has power, how does it work when no one sees it? Because some of the strongest forces are completely invisible. Some power doesn't shout. It doesn't come with a stage, a spotlight, or applause. Some power moves silently, invisibly, beneath the surface. But when it works, everything changes. Salt is one of the most underestimated forces in the earth, not because it lacks strength, but because its strength isn't always seen. You can't always see it, but you know when it's there. You feel the difference. You taste the shift. Salt doesn't beg for attention. It creates it. That's the kind of power you carry. You are never meant to fight for visibility. You are meant to operate in a power that cannot be denied. It's not about being loud. It's about being effective. And effectiveness doesn't need to be flashy to be felt. Generational limits, those invisible walls, patterns, and ceilings, they don't always announce themselves, but they're there, passed down through decisions, culture, silence, fear. And yet, what was passed down can be shut down, because salt doesn't ask for permission to interrupt. It just does. Salt goes where sight can't. It slips into cracks. It dissolves what's hidden. It confronts the invisible, not by fighting it head on, but by undoing it from within. That's how you break what others thought was permanent. Not with force, but with essence. The question is, what are you carrying that's quiet but unstoppable? What if the breakthrough your family's been waiting on isn't in volume, but in presence? What if you're the one chosen to carry the kind of influence that doesn't need attention because it produces results? You don't have to match the energy of the curse. You just have to outlast it. Salt is resilient. It endures. It holds its form under pressure. And when everything else has faded, salt still remains. So stop waiting to be noticed and start being undeniable. Because when the invisible becomes activated, the impossible becomes breakable. But now that you've learned the value of silent power, what happens when salt meets corruption? Because if salt can preserve, it can also restore what was lost. And we're just getting to that part. There's a difference between recovering and restoring. Recovery is getting back what you lost. But restoration, that's getting it back better, stronger, cleaner, more complete than before. Salt doesn't just preserve the present, it reclaims the past. It finds what was damaged, what was contaminated, what was forgotten, and it pulls it back into alignment. That's not chance. That's design. Some people have lived with stolen years, stolen peace, stolen confidence, identity lost through trauma, dreams buried under betrayal, potential locked behind cycles they didn't create. But salt has a strange way of going where hands can't reach, undoing what time and pain try to destroy. Salt enters corruption and doesn't absorb it. It confronts it, breaks it down, strips it of power. Then it begins to restore. Not with noise, not with hype, but with quiet force. One layer at a time, what was lost begins to return. Have you ever wondered how much has been stolen from you silently? Not in one big moment, but little by little, year after year, lie after lie. You didn't even notice it was gone until you looked up one day and didn't recognize who you were anymore. But here's what you need to know. What was stolen can be restored, and not just to where it was, but to what it was meant to be. Salt doesn't recover the surface. It works deep. Deep enough to change the structure, strong enough to heal the roots, quiet enough to go unnoticed until the results start speaking. The restoration begins when you stop waiting for permission. You stop waiting for the perfect moment. You stop agreeing with the idea that too much has been lost. Salt doesn't care how long something's been corrupted. It just does the work. And that means it's never too late for a full restoration. The only question now is, are you willing to let go of the lie that says you're too far gone? Because salt isn't intimidated by damage. It was made for recovery. But if restoration is real, then what's stopping people from stepping into it? That's where the final revelation comes in, the secret of staying activated. Salt loses its power, not when it's attacked, but when it's diluted. It's not pressure that breaks it down, it's mixture. It's when too many influences, too many distractions, too many compromises sneak in, and suddenly what used to be powerful starts to feel powerless. You are born to shift atmospheres, to interrupt patterns, to dismantle strongholds, but influence can't be maintained without intention. Staying effective isn't automatic, it's activated daily. Staying salted means knowing your source. It means refusing to trade your authenticity for acceptance. Refusing to adjust your identity just to blend in. Refusing to allow the world's chaos to corrupt your clarity. Salt doesn't apologize for being different. It doesn't shrink to make others comfortable. It doesn't hide in silence when it was made to preserve, and neither should you. The world around you is designed to dull your power, to make you question your purpose, to make you forget what you carry. Every day, something tries to dilute your salt, whether it's fear, distraction, noise, or even success without substance. But here's the truth. If you want to remain effective, you have to guard what makes you powerful. You don't protect salt by isolating it. You protect it by keeping it pure, focused, aligned, connected to your core. Staying salted isn't about perfection. It's about presence. It's about showing up fully, consistently, intentionally. It's choosing to be the same in private as you are in public. It's remembering in every room you walk into, you carry impact. So the question isn't just, have you been salted? The question is, are you still effective? Because power that's not preserved, it will eventually fade. But salt that stays activated, it leaves a mark. It shapes history. It breaks curses. It transforms lives. And now, it's your turn. You are not random. You are not weak. You are not forgotten. You are salted for purpose, designed for impact, engineered for breakthrough. So don't shrink, don't silence, don't settle. Stay salted and let your presence continue to speak even after you've left the room.